Kyler Murray is big enough. This is Tom Brady. He's not just going to retire. Whitey, big fan of the show. Appreciate you, Ryan Murphy, to my left, making sure everything's smooth, crispy, buttery. James Harden is systematically ruining the game of basketball. It's the most overrated player. And there you are, the Chicago Bears with a open season. And I'm sure Dennis Stars is happy to have Antonio back. If you don't want to get Zion, that's your bad.
Now listening to Open Season, your host, Billy.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. Open Season. I'm your host, Billy Allen, sitting here with Frankie Bradica. We're in the dog days of summer. This is some of the best shows we get. There's going to be a lot of debates tonight. We're going to be touching in with NBA Summer League. Talk about how Malcolm Brogdon is going to fit in with this team. We'll talk a little bit about, can anybody take down Pete Alonso in the home run derby? Chris Sale is making his debut against Tampa tonight. I think he's already done a couple innings. Saw him throwing like 95. Is Chris Sale back? And we'll talk a little bit about the QB rankings that came out from ESPN. Shocker, Mac Jones wasn't in there. But a whole lot to chew on tonight. Orlando shutting down Paolo Banchero already. Utah Jazz willing to listen to Donovan Mitchell scenarios. And Frankie, we started out probably with NBA Summer League. A lot of talk and interviews. We actually finally got to hear Malcolm Brogdon speak this week. And boy, he sure likes himself some Malcolm Brogdon, huh?
Listen, I tell you this every show. I tell you guys this every prep call. This is what every corner, every wide receiver, and virtually every NBA player is like. I mean, it goes back to O.J. Mayo at 17 thinking he can take down Michael Jordan. This is just what people think. This is their ego. And for the record, you got a bunch of guys who think that way. Jaylen Brown thinks that he is an elite two-way player, top 5. Marcus Smart thinks he's the best defensive player in the league. Jason Tatum thinks he could average what he averaged in the finals and still be a superstar on those ruffle bags. Like, I'm just saying, Malcolm Brogdon fits right in with a team full of overinflated egos.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that's going to lead to anything like 2019 where there's, too many people, not enough balls, guys aren't happy enough? Do you see – I just feel like a lot of people can see an impending conflict between him and Marcus Smart, for either one of them kind of getting upset over not getting the amount of time that they're used to. Do you think that'll be there? Because I do.
As a question in a vacuum, I think that will be there. However, I think that's not what we have to worry about, best case scenario. Because if they both play well, they'll both play a lot. The team likes Marcus more than I do. I love Brogdon. I don't think he's as good as he thinks he is, but I love Brogdon. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the league. But I think Derek White's the one we have to worry about. Derek White at some point is going to look at himself as the 5th highest paid backcourt player on the team, a guy who we traded a first-round pick to get. And if Marcus Smart and Brogdon are both playing well, they're both up around 28 minutes. What does that leave for Derek White? Because Jaylen Brown's minutes aren't going down. So that backcourt begins to get really crowded.
Yeah, this team has a lot of point guards now, huh? I mean, that is abundantly clear. And so I kind of think that Malcolm Brogdon is so confident about playing for this team. I mean, I guess, why do you think he's willing to take a bench role, Frankie? Because this is a guy that doesn't sound like a bench guy.
Because he doesn't think he's a bench player. I think him and Marcus Smart both think the same thing. They're both sizing this guy up. Like, if I can just beat him up in practice, I'll get his minutes. They're both looking at each other the same way. And by the way, Brogdon is way better for our offense on the court. His ego's probably better for us off the court. I think this is the open door for Marcus Smart. I keep saying if we left two first-round picks on the table for White and Brogdon and it stops us from getting a superstar, there's your 2 first-round picks right there. Trade Marcus Smart.
I completely agree. I mean, you'll get no arguments from me on that. I guess I'm just the reason why I ask you that is I think that Brogdon is so confident, so happy because I think he knows when you roll the basketballs out, he's going to look so much better compared to Marcus Smart. And you're not going to be able to not carve out 30 to 35 minutes for Brogdon a game once you see him next to somebody like Smart. Do you think that's part of it for him?
I would have traded Marcus Smart for picks. I would have traded Marcus Smart for lesser value because, number one, in that league, you almost never get value on the dollar. You're almost always accepting something like 60 cents. And two, I just think he's bad for chemistry. He does not accept his role. He thinks it's a big three with him, Jalen, and Jason, and it's not. And he's going to throw chairs in the locker room and upset Jaylen Brown. He's going to call them out in the media after the finals. I don't think he has, of all the players who play like him, you know, the Lindsey Hunters, the Draymond Greens, the Dennis Rodmans.
Patrick Beverley.
Patrick Beverley. Nobody who makes winning plays and is that type of player has ever failed to accept their role quite like Marcus Smart. I mean, it's just absurd. He has more losing plays than any player who's considered a winning player has ever had in their NBA career. And he's young-ish still.
And that's what I always talk about with Marcus Smart. It's the Marcus Smart experience where, yes, he does have good plays, but he almost always nullifies them within 30 seconds of that. And a lot of times it's in crunch time. And I think nothing speaks more to it than the fact that when they brought in Brogdon, they had to pull Marcus Smart aside right away and was like, you know, don't worry, Marcus, you'll still be starting. And it's just, you should be able to have that guy come off the bench. I think a lot of people can see that Marcus Smart isn't quite what he thinks he is. And, you know, I just think we have a lot more options and that he's more expendable, to your point. I mean, basically, if you're in our camp, you're a fan of seeing less Marcus Smart, the Malcolm Brogdon move should help do that for you.
Well, here's my thing for Marcus Smart, because I really like the player. I just don't want to cheer for him on my team. I just don't think it, because if he was on a different team, this is the type of guy that I would be demanding the Celtics bring in. A PJ Tucker type. Love Marcus Smart, the player. It's just clear that the premier talent that we have on this roster and him do not see eye to eye. It's clear that he does not view himself on the proper tier that he should view himself on. And I think that's just detrimental to the team's progress. I wish we could have a Marcus Smart that accepted his role, and I would love this team going into the season. Instead, we have this adjustment period, and we have this how's it going to shake out. We have this probation period where early on, if this team starts off bad, that could be catastrophic for this team.
I agree. This team is definitely – they're going to need a hot start. You know, they need people to settle into their roles, and I think part of what made 2019 tough was that you had all that talent and then you had them losing games. So it's like people can accept something when they're winning, you know, for some point in time. But if this team isn't winning games out of the start, that's not going to be good. Because you have all these guys that have bought into Ime Udoka. If you have people start getting off that, I would definitely agree. This team needs a hot start. They need to have some momentum out of the gate.
I do want to bring up one thing, because I've heard that comparison a lot today, and I don't see it, me personally. Like, I'm not trashing you, because I've heard it from nearly every show, every sports like pundit has brought it up, that 2019 comparison. I just don't think there is one. I just think the top tier talent on that team was so much better than what it is today. I just think the problem in 2019 is that Danny Ainge couldn't pick two guys to get rid of. Two guys in a pick. Two guys to just make the egos work and get the most out of that team. He just thought, I'm going to have my cake and eat it too, and the cake ate itself. That's what happened in 2019. I don't think this team is as talented. Now, it should, in theory, work better, more cohesively, be more complementary, but it's certainly not as talented.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem in 2019, too, was that a lot of those guys were in contract years. Like, if you talk about Marcus Morris, you talk about Terry Rozier. So it wasn't kind of as you have it with, like, Gallinari. It feels like he is clearly understanding that at this point in his career, he's a bench guy. And so I think some of the guys that they're getting, you know, whether Brogdon can actually handle coming off the bench, he's at least saying that he can. He's saying all the right things coming in. So, you know, to your point, it's not apples for apples, but I think it is something where, you know, that team was really stacked. And this team on paper looks really good when you have Brogdon on it.
I don't think this is on the table, but let me ask you, just out of curiosity, would you be willing to trade 2 to 3 first-round picks, Marcus Smart and Derek White, for a Donovan Mitchell-type player? Not necessarily the biggest needle mover, but a guy with some upside and certainly a guy who's a more premier talent than what you're giving away.
1,000%. I feel like that's something where you're trading in trash to get that's kind of like a Kevin Garnett almost, but it's like, let's just give some stuff in to get one good player. Like the way I value those two guys in those 2 first-round picks, I mean, I don't value the first-round picks a whole lot. And the ceiling that these guys have versus a Donovan Mitchell, I mean, Donovan Mitchell could be a 1 on a team. Look, you don't want him to be your 1, but he could be a 1. I mean, like in the same sense that Jaylen Brown could be a 1 on a team or something like that, right? So I think
Antoine
you
Walker
definitely have to do a move like that for Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Look at the talent of that team.
For sure. I agree wholeheartedly. But again, going back to my greater theme over the last, month of shows, if the 2 firsts that you traded for Brogdon and White, if you could have gotten instead some combination of DeJounte Murray and Donovan Mitchell, and all you had to do was send Marcus Smart and those same picks out the door with maybe 1 or 2 additional, don't you think we made the wrong decision? And I love them. Again, I've always said this, in a vacuum, I love those moves. I do like Derek White, the player. I do like Malcolm Brogdon a lot. But if we could have kept what we gave for those guys for maybe some other guys, would we not have been in a better position?
Yeah, no, I think so. And I don't even like to think about that, really. Because I thought the Derek White trade was a good trade, but if you think about if you had left that on the table to be able to do something like that, that wouldn't have put us in the best position for this year, but would have put us in a hell of a position for this year coming up.
That's kind of I just don't think Smart and Brown work, ultimately. I just don't think they work. I think they have...
I don't think they like each other.
I'm sure they like each other because they've been teammates for 5 years and you played on high school teams. You get very close to people from opposite sides of the earth and opposite cultures because you're brothers for 3 months a year. I'm sure they have a love and respect for each other. I'm sure of it. But they have a disdain and resentment that is equal and opposite. And I just don't think that is sustainable any longer in that locker room. I think it's run its course.
Yeah. Do you think they want to play together? Tatum and Brown.
Tatum and Brown absolutely want to play together.
Yeah,
there's a delusional sense there too. They think they're the best duo in the league, which they are not. But they are probably top 10. I think I have them like 5 or 6. They're up there, but they think they're the best. So I think they want to play together for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm them, I probably am thinking that I'm the best too. We can see that they're not, but they're really not that far off. I mean, we've done this exercise a few times, but how many? I mean, are we even taking Durant and Kyrie over them at this point?
I would, but I've always said I'm at least consistent. I err on the side of talent most times. I mean, I would rather have Brown and Tatum. I'd rather build around Brown and Tatum. But for a game or a series, who do I think is the best tandem between those two? Durant and Irving.
Yeah. Well, it's time that we disagree a little bit, Frank. We've been getting along too much on this. Let's go to the NBA Summer League a little bit. So we've seen that Paolo Banchero, he's obviously shown enough for Orlando to say he doesn't have to play any more Summer Leagues. I like what I've seen from Chet Holmgren, but it sounds like you are not quite a fan. Tell me why.
How could you not like what you've seen, Billy? How? How could you look at what you've seen from Chet Holmgren and not like what you've seen?
You don't like a little step back three?
I'll tell you why I disagree. And I also saw a side-by-side of like his first bucket and Dirk's last bucket, and they were virtually identical. And I love those Kobe Jordan comparisons. Love them. So I'm all for it. I'm on the hype train because I want him to be good. My passions are better when there's more talented players. But boy, the kid is small. Boy, the kid is skinny. I remember Naismith, Lonzo Ball, these are guys who have won Summer League MVPs. I just don't think it means that much. I don't think his 5 blocks against G League players and future mechanics is all that important. Nothing that he's done in Summer League has taken me off of my stance, which is, boy, the ceiling's high, but goodness, the floor is low. This kid, if he cannot put on 15 pounds and maintain some skill in shooting, will never be good enough in that league.
Can he be can he be better than Porzingis? I mean, I feel like he's a Porzingis, but can actually dribble and dribble and pass.
He has more skills than Porzingis, but here's the thing. Porzingis, when he's healthy, is a productive NBA player because he's got girth to that height. Yes, he's skinny. Yes, he's 7'3", but he's what, 240? Chet Holmgren is 7'1", 188 pounds, holding a brick, soaking wet. That's what he is. I'm sorry. He's going to get on the court against a PJ Tucker and go nowhere. And it's not for lack of skill. He's got the skill. He's got all the skill Porzingis doesn't have. But Porzingis can, even if reluctantly. Dirk could, even if reluctantly, move another human being out of the way when it matters. Can Chet Holmgren do that right now?
Is Chet Holmgren not the same size as Durant was coming out of college?
Did Durant not have trouble moving people, and did he lose a lot of games in Seattle?
I just feel like, look, I was not crazy about Chet Holmgren, but now that I'm seeing him a little bit more, I just feel like with the way the NBA is played these days, like, would he have been great in the 80s and 90s? He probably would have gotten destroyed. But with today's NBA, where, I don't know, I just see these 7-footers who can handle the ball. I feel like he's going to fit into this type of NBA. Like, it's more of, for me, it's more of the NBA than him. Like, he kind of fits into.
I would ask you a question I know you think is crazy, but it's not. You've seen 2 games in the Summer League from Chet Holmgren that have impressed you. You saw something like 20 in college that didn't. Do you think that Chet Holmgren is better than Darko Milicic, or do you think the league wasn't set up for Darko and it is set up for Chet?
Could Milicic really shoot it from 3?
Yes, he could. Darko Milicic and Yijian Lee had all the skills that they would have needed had they stuck around. I always say it. Danilo Gallinari, Ersan Ilyasova were draft busts, some of the biggest of all time, but they stayed healthy and in shape long enough for the league to change, and then they became a commodity. Because being soft and undersized at that position didn't matter once the league became more skilled because they could always shoot it. And I just think if Darko was drafted today, that's a 20 and 10 guy. And I don't know that Chet is that yet. And I'm not a huge Darko fan, but I was a huge Yijian Lee fan, and there are tons of parallels. There's something to be said about those mid-aughties, super talented European players that the league just wasn't quite ready for them yet.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like quite a leap to go 20 and 10 on Darko.
In this league, everything that he was a bust because of is now valued in this league.
You're basically just saying that a guy that was like 3 and 3 could go to like 20 and 10, though, you know?
I'm saying a guy who failed because he was not complimentary to the league would have had a completely different trajectory had he come into a league that benefited his skill set. For the record, Antoine Walker, if drafted today, is 35 a game and a walking bucket. And I think Antoine Walker's trash. It's just what the league is. If these guys got to play with some of these rules against some of these defenders, they would have averaged 40. And I'm not trying to be like old man yelling at clouds. I don't want to get into it. But I'm just saying, much like Danilo Gallinari and Ersan Ilyasova, if Darko wasn't mentally broken from being a giant bust and had just stayed healthy long enough for the league to covet stretch 4s and 5s, he would have had a career. And if he was drafted today, different story. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I mean, he would probably fit in better today. I mean, that's kind of what I look at is more of like the way the NBA is. It's kind of like the way that I thought LaMelo Ball would be good. It's just like tall point guards who can run and like I don't know. It just every tall point guard these days gets a triple double. You know, it's just
except for Carter Williams. Because
Carter Williams was only good as a rookie. He got a triple-double every game as a rookie, but then it was like that guy had an interesting career. He was like an amazing rookie. Like, what was he, like 15, 8, and 8 or something as a rookie?
Point guard Tyreek Evans. They both have very, very short, cataclysmic primes. It was about 1 or 2.
Tyreek Evans, a 25-5 guy as a rookie, and then never did it again.
I bought hook, line, and sinker. I loved Tyreek Evans. I loved him when he was a role player getting traded.
Wasn't he recently out of the league for 2 years for drugs or something like that?
I think it was for being a bum. He might have gotten a drug bust, but I think being bad. I mean, in the NBA, they decided that their solution to stopping having positive drug tests was to stop testing. So I don't think he was out of the league for drugs.
Well, I just like Chris Anderson type drugs is what I'm talking about. Remember when Birdman got suspended for a couple of years? But I'm not sure. I could be wrong on that. Could just be giving him a bad rap, but screw it. So that's our scoop on Chet. It looks like Jabari Smith is playing some really good defense.
I'm very happy you brought up Jabari Smith. I think the Rockets are they're a year away from being a year away, and I know that's like a caveated take, so I'll elaborate. So at least I go out on a limb. I think Jabari Smith is very good. I think he's better and has higher upside than RJ Barrett, who, even though he's underperformed, I very much liked coming out of college. I still think the ceiling on Barrett's very good. I think he's a clutch player. I think Jabari Smith has tons of talent, and I loved Jalen. I think they're going to win something like 38, 42 games this year and surprise people, and I think it's a bad decision. If I'm a Rockets front office executive, I'm sitting these guys as much as possible, and I want another lottery pick. Give me one more guy to add to these two studs, and then we can start to build through free agency. Because once you got the guys, people come here. Boston's not a destination, but it is if you got Garnett, Allen, and Pierce. Boston's not a destination, but it is if you make the finals and you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So, you know what? I think
that would definitely catch a lot of people by surprise if they win 38 games or more. To go on a former Rocket, John Wall, he seems to be saying a lot of the right things too, as far as fitting into the Clippers, says that he's been shooting a lot more threes, getting comfortable with that. And at this point in his career, realizes that he can't be a Batman every night, which honestly was kind of refreshing for me to hear, because I didn't know how well the fit would be for him with the Clippers. I still don't love that fit. I know that you're kind of up on it. Tell me about what you see for those guys with the Clippers. Like, you think that John Wall will be a 15-point-a-game guy over there, or what is John Wall going to be like this year?
I think with Kawhi out, he's got the potential to put up big numbers, but I'm not even sure that would be good for the Clippers in the long run. What I see in terms of making this a fit is he is still a better perimeter player than Reggie Jackson. Like, all of Reggie Jackson was because for the first time in his career, he accepted a role, he prioritized winning, he got behind the stars, people left him open, and he made him pay. So if that's the role that John Wall is in, look out. Because if John Wall is in that role and he's getting single teamed every night, and the other two guys are actually being superstars, John Wall will be a GD problem. No question. I'm not convinced that Kawhi will play. I am not convinced that Paul George won't just need a sabbatical or go 2 weeks without scoring 10 points or whatever it is that crawls up inside his mental. But I think John Wall, for the first time in his life, realized how much he loved basketball when it was taken away from him in the last few years. And that's either going to do one of two things, like it did for Carmelo. You know, it's either going to humble you and I just want to play basketball for as long as I have left to play basketball, or I never accept this role. I need to be a star. I'll go to China and be a star. Stephon Marbury. So there's two ways this goes, but I'm excited.
Yeah. No, I'm surprised to hear what John Wall said. Like, I didn't know he would kind of be as willing to take that backseat. I almost thought it would be more of like a Westbrook situation where he'd still kind of be trying to force it. So I do think that that's encouraging, that he understands that he'll be playing more off ball, won't be scoring 20 points a game.
I think on balance, most NBA players nowadays, whether they feel that way or not, would be willing to say those things. I think Westbrook is a special case where he's got an MVP. He's done something one other guy has done, and he did it for an extended period of time so that he's done something nobody else has done ever. So if everybody in that league's ego is out of control, the guys with the credentials and trophies are the ones who it's much harder to say, stop acting like that.
So another guy that we should probably talk about from Summer League, or maybe a couple guys, the Warriors have a couple of young guys, and one of them is obviously James Wiseman, who, and we just talked about this, how much you got to take this all for a grain of salt, but he looks like his defense has improved a lot over getting some time to come back.
Billy, Billy, you take summer league games with a grain of salt, usually. But if it suits your narrative, like, for example, if you have been on open season talking about how good the Warriors' young core is, and then Wiseman does something like he's done, which is just play solid, seems to have made incremental improvements in certain areas where he was lacking, then we completely take full stock into it. Because what I'm trying to tell you is, along with Kuminga, along with Moses, James Wiseman provides the core of that team, which is 30-plus guys, with young guys that they need. Because they will continue to be a free agent destination if they've got 3 young studs and 3 old studs, all under manageable contracts.
Here's a question for you. Who ends up being the best out of these 3? Moses Moody, Wiseman, or Kuminga?
Wiseman.
You think there's any chance that Moses Moody or Kuminga ends up... You seem like you didn't even need to think there.
Kuminga is far more raw and has more talent. Kuminga could be Bam Adebayo that can shoot. Kuminga has as high a ceiling as Wiseman and will probably have fewer bad games in his career. But James Wiseman is bigger, stronger, faster, with more talent. I'm sorry. I just err on the side of talent most of the time, and there's a reason he was picked 2nd overall. The reason that he is supposed to be a young core build-around player and wasn't a steal in the draft. No, he was simply drafted 2nd. He was simply drafted where he was supposed to be.
God, you've got to be so excited to be a Warriors fan right now. I mean,
I wouldn't know what that feels like. Objectively, it looks like they've got a bright future. But I hope that they all stay healthy, because we never wish injuries on this show, that they never win another game. I hope they go 0-82. Screw that team, quite frankly. And that's, I mean, I'm still sad from losing. You know what I mean? Put this show in a box. I haven't gotten over losing to the Warriors. So as much as I'll talk about them objectively, forget that team. Like, I hope they never win again.
Well, at least you're being honest. It sounds like you just took a little truth serum there. So let's see who else. So Quentin Grimes for the Knicks. And again, like we keep saying, you can't get too excited about this, but the guy's averaging 24 points a game so far through the summer league. And I guess do you think he's a guy that Knicks fans can get excited about?
No. Let me rephrase that. Yes, he's a guy Knicks fans can get excited about. They just paid $100 million for Jalen Brunson. Yes, they can get excited about this kid. Congrats. You found an NBA starter, and where he'll go, we'll see. But I thought the Rockets did a good thing when they got Christian Wood, and I'm mad they let him go. Like, I just think you can't have it in today's league. You can't have enough young talent. It's different than the NBA's ever been. Because it's always been you can get to the conference finals and not get back. But in the NBA of all sports, usually you did. If you're the Rockets with a great start, the Spurs, the Celtics, and you've got those teams, you usually get back there. We just saw the Hawks get there and then go way back. We just saw the Suns get to the finals, probably never going to get there again. Just saw the Bucks win with one superstar. This has been a weird 3 or 4 years of influx in this league since the bubble. And it would be nice to have a stash of young players, which the Celtics do. But some of these other teams, like the Warriors are in a golden spot, not to go back to it, but they've got so much young talent and so much old talent. That's what we should have done. I love Danilo Gallinari for that reason. I think he's finally at a point in his career where he's not trying to ever start again. He's just like, I'd like to shoot forever. He's in that Patty Mills role, but he's 6'9". I just think NBA teams should be looking for specialty players and young talent.
Well, it seems like that. I mean, the Celtics and Warriors definitely both have enough of that. You talked about teams that can't get back there again. Something that we had mentioned was the fact that the Celtics had 2 stars that were 25 or younger get to the NBA Finals. We talked about how, those teams that got there before with their young stars, the Magic, the Rockets, we talked about how they ended up never getting back. And so the Celtics would be the first team really that did make it back. Do you think that they'll rebound over this and make it, and this core will make it back to the finals?
They definitely wouldn't be the first team that made it back. Hakeem lost in 85, won a championship 10 years later with a completely different team still built around him. And I could bring up other ones, but it's happened. It would be probably the first time where 2 stars this young.
No team with 2 stars that were 25 and younger that went to the finals ever made it back with that core.
With those 2 guys, sure.
Yes.
But Ralph Sampson got hurt, so it's not like the Rockets wouldn't have made it back. So that comparison still works for me. But I get it. And again, I love Jaylen Brown, but you know how you guarantee the Celtics a championship? And I don't want to say this because it sounds almost sacrilege. If Jaylen Brown's your 3rd best player and Jason Tatum's your 2nd, you could almost guarantee a championship if you were to ever put them in those circumstances. But would the ego subside? And could you coach that? Could you manage it? But
that is pretty damn greedy. Jason Tatum is never going to be a 2 in this league, not during his prime.
But can he be a 2A? Hold on. If you had ever gotten, call it Carmelo and D Wade, neither one would have been better than the other. They would have been on equal playing field. But if they had one, it would have done a lot to both legacies. Different when LeBron went there because LeBron is significantly better than both of them. But if those 2 had got together, if a CP3 and Carmelo had ever got together, guys that are on the same tier.
Who's your example of this player?
Trae Young, Luka Doncic. Those are the guys because at the same age, they're, you know what I mean? Because I think if Luka came here, he'd be better. I think he's a better player than Tatum overall. I think he's got the higher ceiling. I'd rather have Tatum, but I think Luka's easier to build around and does more things well in the game of basketball.
So as long as the Celtics add Luka, we're in a good spot.
You asked me to name a specific example. There are going
to be... I guess just like, is Bradley Beal an answer to that question?
Yes. Bradley Beal's a better offensive player. He's not a better 2-way player. He's probably...
Is there any chance in hell they would do a deal for for not somebody not named Jaylen Brown? The Wizards?
Here's the thing. I'm beginning to think that NBA teams would take trade offers for things that don't include Brown or Tatum, but they'd have to include Smart, and that's something that we are not willing to do. I don't want to go back to this. I didn't mean to make our Malcolm Brogdon segment trash Marcus Smart. I like the player. I'd love to root for him on not my team, but the answer is yes. I don't know that we are willing to do it. I don't know that we're willing to part ways with our Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Marcus Smart winning players. But yeah, no, I'd trade anyone, and I love Robert Williams, but I would trade any of them for a Bradley Beal, a high-level elite talent.
Frank, it would probably be appropriate for you to, apologize for a number of things, but trashing Marcus Smart on this show will never be one of them. So, anything that leads us back to those roads. Flipping the page a little bit to the NFL, they came out, ESPN has gone ahead and ranked kind of like the top 10 of like every position almost. It's like defensive ends, QBs, all that. Shocker, the Pats are really like nowhere to be found on any of these rankings, which is very concerning. What's that?
Should they be?
It's just, this team does not have a lot of talent. I mean, it is scary. This team is incredibly average. I mean, maybe their running backs are above, like I would say their running backs are above the average stable of running backs, maybe. But like, where else are they strong?
Nowhere. They've got a B+ running back room and a B- wide receiving core. And that doesn't even include the tight ends, really. It includes Hunter Henry in the red zone. But between the 20s, doesn't really include either tight end.
So they ranked the top 10 quarterbacks. Figured we could chat a little bit about that and see where we agree, where we disagree. So the first one was Aaron Rodgers. And I feel like I already have to disagree a little bit. Like, maybe Aaron Rodgers had the best year last year, but do you think that Aaron Rodgers will be the best quarterback this year?
I think the top 4 are the top 4 in order is debatable. But I think the bottom of that top 10 is far more debatable and enjoyable. Like, isn't the top 4 some combination of Allen, Mahomes, Brady, Rodgers? Isn't that just what the top 4 is? Isn't that just what it is?
Yeah, it would be hard to think of another top 4.
Yeah, I got Herbert at 5 over Russell Wilson. Like, we should start there. You know what I mean? Like, and again, I guess the direct answer to your question, yes, I think Aaron Rodgers overall is the best quarterback in the league. He does not show up when it matters. He's got the prettiest ball, the most talent. It's a league that is complementary to quarterbacks. He's the best quarterback throughout 17 regular season games. You'd rather have him than anybody else. Now, for a drive, for a quarter in the playoffs, different question.
You wouldn't rather have Mahomes over him right now?
In fantasy, yes. In the playoffs, yes. In the regular season, no.
Okay. What about this year, just with the fact that, Alan Lazar is his best wide receiver? I mean, he's a good quarterback, but even Brady with, when you had Rashae Caldwell as his number one, there's only so much he can do.
Tom Brady was a fairly decent fantasy quarterback when he had Rashae Caldwell, Chad Jackson, Jabbar Gaffney, and Benjamin Watson. That was that 2006 team, I believe. And he did just fine. And an elite quarterback will do just fine. Peyton Manning did fine when he was throwing to Cody Whitehead. He'll be fine. Russell Wilson did well for like 5 years throwing to absolutely nobody. So we'll be fine. They'll be fine. Elite quarterbacks have a funny way of just being fine.
Okay. So I guess no big disagreements in the top four. Then you have Joe Burrow, number 5. Matt Stafford at 6. You've got Herbert at 7.
I got Herbert 5.
Yeah. I think if you're going off potential, he's definitely going to be the one that is at 5. I think the only thing about Herbert is I think he can win in this league, but I just guess he hasn't proved it yet that he can kind of string together games. I mean, some of these other quarterbacks, for better or not, they just have the win factor. So that may be holding him back.
Does Matthew Stafford have a win factor, or does going from the Lions
just won an effing
provide a win factor?
I would say he has a win factor. I would say that when you win a Super Bowl in this league, I mean, look at Eli Manning.
Okay, fair, but that's different because Eli Manning made 2 of the most unstoppable throws in the history of the Super Bowl. So that's completely different. It's not even the same. Eli Manning went to the frozen tundra 3 degrees below and won on the road. Like, we're not going to describe winning quotients with Eli and these bums. We're just not going to do it. But my point is, Matthew Stafford won 5 games his last year in Detroit. Jared Goff won 3 last year. The same. There's no winning quotient. And for the record, the Rams made a Super Bowl with Stafford or with Goff and won one with Stafford. So there's not a huge difference. It's just that one guy can win and one guy probably can't. And I get that. But Matt Stafford at 7, overrated. Matt Stafford was 7 like 7 years ago.
You have no respect for winning a Super Bowl. My God.
I absolutely do. When you're driving the bus, the first time they got to the Super Bowl, the driver of the bus was Gurley and Donald. Those were the drivers. The driver last year was Donald and McVay. It was not Stafford. And for the record, if we're just ranking reasons why they won, I would put Kupp ahead of Stafford as well. So yes, I respect Super Bowl wins. But when you are a quarterback and I don't have you top 3 as reasons for why you won said Super Bowl, no, you're Namath. You won and you're super popular, so you get accolades forever. But no, your career is going to be overrated because of this.
Did Matt Stafford have a bad year last year or something? Like, what is going on here? I feel like he played in really well. You're going to give McVay more credit than Stafford?
How many Super Bowls has McVay been to without Stafford?
I don't know. I just think it's a lot different when you're not actually playing on the field.
Well,
somebody's got to go out there and actually.
I agree with you, but in McVay's case, there are 32 NFL head coaches. A third of them are from his coaching tree.
I just feel like
every single coach that has implemented his system, it has worked to a varying degree of success. It's different. This guy's legit, and he was fun to make fun of before he won one because we were able to talk about how we spanked him and made him look like a kid and made his offense look silly. But now he's got one. So because he was a driver, I think that Super Bowl means a big world of difference to McVay. I don't think it does for Stafford. They made one without him.
He threw 41 touchdowns. What the F?
Do you think
I just feel like, look, how many times are there these teams that we look at and we're like, oh, they're an all-star team or whatever, and they just don't do anything? Like Stafford, he had all that pressure. You plugged him in, and he at least did it. Now, was he on a stacked team? Yes, but there is something to say for, like, executing and actually winning.
That all-star team thing you said, I don't think any team in any sport has ever been considered an all-star team with the best player at the premier position and not one. Like all those all-star teams you mentioned didn't have a top 3 quarterback. And in the NBA, it'd be the same thing. None of them had, an all-time center in the 50s, 60s, 70s or an all-time point guard in the last 20 years.
I didn't even know how I got here. I don't love Stafford, but I just feel like at this point, you kind of have to give him some credit in his career.
I do. He's a top 12 quarterback, and he's been a top 5, 7 quarterback in this league. Not now.
I don't have him. I wouldn't have him ranked that high either, but I mean, just
there are
as we'll
so
get
many quarterbacks and wide receivers right now. It's the first time in my lifetime I get to be picky. There is so much talent at certain positions in this league, and quarterback's just one of them. I think there are 15 guys who could have won a Super Bowl with that Rams team and coaching. And I think Kirk Cousins is one of them.
Is Mac Jones?
That is a very good question. No.
Yeah, honestly, when it comes down to it, I just don't think that Mac Jones is the level of, when you look at teams with quarterbacks on that level that made the Super Bowl or something, like you're looking at maybe like a Jimmy Garoppolo, right? For the 49ers, but they were absolutely stacked. In the Pats, you just don't see them with that type of roster. I mean, so if you have a top 15, top 20 quarterback and your team is nasty, maybe you have a chance. But, I don't think Mac Jones can put this team on his shoulders, so to speak. I don't even think that much pressure should be put on him. I think you should understand that he's more of a game manager.
I want to put it into context because I said no to that question pretty quickly. But here's the thing. I don't think Mac Jones is like some scrub or anything like that. I think Mac Jones is probably in the next 3 years going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league pre-snap. Going to be one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league under 15 yards. I think there's a spot for him in this league and an offensive system where he can win 11 games a year and never win a Super Bowl. I think that exists. I think he is Chad Pennington, but smarter. And that's not a knock. I really like Chad Pennington, but Chad's problem is that he couldn't stay healthy. And had he stayed healthy, he would have won more games. But
yeah, that elbow.
They're in a different league. Your quarterback could have been smart and not made mistakes when Pennington was playing, and that could have won you things. Just being smart and not making mistakes isn't going to win you as many games when people are not punting and are not kicking field goals and are just letting Lamar Jackson and Mahomes and Allen run all over and Kyler Murray run all over the yard. It's just what we punted. It was the 3rd highest in the league, 4th and 2 or less with a 1-possession game. We punted 3rd highest rate in the league. That used to work, especially for a Bill Belichick defense. It doesn't. It doesn't anymore.
Yep, you could win by just sitting on the ball, having a top defense, having a good run game, dinking and dunking and keeping the clock going. But yeah, in these days where, we watched that Bills and Kansas City game, they were scoring every 40 seconds at the end of that game in a shoot. You are not going to win that type of game with this team. They just don't have the firepower. So I don't know. It's interesting here in Foxborough. You just got to wonder how is Belichick letting his last few years? How can he be so lackadaisical?
That's not even hard to answer. That question's not hard to answer.
Does he not want to catch Shula?
He believes he'll catch Shula no matter what he does.
Oh, doing his method. He wants to do it his way.
He wants guys that aren't going to push back, and that's on the roster and the coaching staff, clearly.
God, yeah.
I'm stunned Charlie Weiss never made it back.
Why are we trying to teach other coaches how to coach in
Because
Belichick?
that's easier than getting a young offensive guy in here who, when Bill says X, Y, Z, he goes, but what if we do this? That's just not something Belichick's interested in right now. So that's why it looks like it does.
Will it be good for Mac's development to have Belichick in his ear?
But it might be good for his win-loss record. I still think Bill Belichick's a top 5 coach in the league. I still think X's and O's wise, he's a top 3 coach in this league. If we're doing both sides of the ball, I think he's probably still first X's and O's in this league. But in terms of Mac, Tom Brady became an elite passer because he was Tom effing Brady. Mac Jones will not have that ability to compensate for a lack of coaching. So he will take very strongly to what he's being taught, and that will continue to be spoon-fed to him by a coach that does not care for the quarterback position or offense in general.
Yeah. I hate it.
Sorry to be so honest.
Oh, well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about baseball. The Sox have Chris Sale returning to the mound tonight, which, could be a pretty big boost as long as he, you don't have to take him off in a straitjacket this week. Nuts how crazy he went last week for a tune-up outing in Worcester. If any of us were that completely unhinged at our jobs, we'd be sent out so quickly. This guy's like 35 years old, or in his 30s. Like, how is this okay?
Billy, you work in sales. I work in restaurants. There are a lot of people more unhinged than what we saw from him last weekend that still maintain their job and do quite a good job, actually. It depends on what arena we're in. Tons of pro athletes are more unhinged than that. Trell Owens did curls and sit-ups in his driveway. But, just to stay focused, I love Chris Sale. I think he's appointment viewing. I hated the Tommy John injury. I was willing to write off a year and a half. It's taken 2. It's taken a full 6 months longer than this recovery time usually is for a guy who's frail and has never been good late in the season. I think it's exciting. I think for a Red Sox team that could really use a shot in the arm, no pun intended, I think he is coming in at a great time. But if he does not provide them with that adrenaline rush, if he is not an addition, a trade deadline acquisition simply from getting healthy and doesn't provide that morale boost, I think we made pickups last year that, while I didn't agree with, made the team feel like they were invested in and made the players play better, because there's a lot to do with mental in sports. I just think Chris Sale's a nutbag, and I don't think he's had quite the same stuff for 3 years, since before the Tommy John. So
yeah.
Who's the best Chris Sale will be a force. If not, we're just playing for who gets to lose to the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard people saying this is the most live his arm has been in 4 years, and he's actually cruising right now through this first start back against Tampa, who, obviously they beat us up last night. He's only given up 3 hits and has 5 strikeouts through 5, only 78 pitches, 53 for strikes. So, I mean, that's got to be pretty encouraging for you if you're a Sox or Chris Sale fan.
It's Tampa.
Yeah, but Tampa, the Red Sox are god awful against the AL East. What are they, 7-19?
It's something that shouldn't even be possible. But we're still battling with Tampa for 3rd and 4th in the division, so it's not as though he's shutting down a rock star lineup. They're an economic team that has high value nerdy players with high WARs and high home run per 9 innings, but they strike out a lot, and they don't hit for average. And they use their bullpen a ton. So it's not necessarily... And again, Chris Sale doesn't pitch against the other pitchers. So baseball's weird like that. If you're an elite pitcher, sure. But if you're going against a shit team, you should just win. That's how that works in that sport. Half of that league is trying to tank. I know we don't talk about baseball nearly enough, but the league's got 30 teams and 15 teams want to lose. So it shouldn't be hard to beat a team that you have twice the payroll of.
What does tanking get you in the MLB?
Just more cracks at the can. The way analytics has infiltrated that sport, they want more high draft picks to stash in AA so that they can create a wonderful farm system for whoever takes their job as, head of baseball ops. It's just a bunch of Billy Beans in there. It's a bunch of everybody in baseball watch Moneyball, and now they all just want that guy. None of them care about batting average. None of them care about slugging. They're all just like, yeah, but this guy's WAR. This guy's no. Sometimes the raw numbers do work. Just relax a little.
I know. Let's not go absolutely crazy just with like these expected batting averages. And
what does that mean? He should have had a 340 average because he hit a lot of balls hard, but there was great defense played against him. Yeah, but his average is 220. So I don't care.
Saying that
that's why we kept Jackie Bradley Jr. for so long, by the way, because his expected batting average was always over 300, and he went on tears. But on balance, some of the worst plate appearances you'll ever see is from that player. He's not a professional hitter. He's a professional defensive player. He's a Gold Glove defensive player.
Who's not a professional hitter?
Jackie Bradley Jr.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
not a Major League Baseball player on offense at the plate. But we use stupid metrics like expected batting average because he hits it hard against lefties for a left field line out. That's still a good thing in these analytics. No. Watch the games. The guy's bad. Watch the games.
There's a new stat in baseball. It's called like meltdowns or something like that, where it's basically like your team had a greater chance of losing because you came into the game or something. It's just amazing, like how far they are taking this.
I believe you should have these numbers if you're an organization. You should be as prepared as possible to start to have your manager manage with these instead of game feel, instead of experience, instead of knowing the players that he has at his disposal. That's when you get kooky to me. I'm all for analytics. I want a binder this thick, Billy. I want a binder that is longer with analytic pages than all the Harry Potter books are standing next to each other. But I want it to be taken with a grain of salt and managed by a baseball guy.
I agree. I don't want a bunch of nerds just running it and not even paying attention to the game.
No, see, I want a bunch of nerds. But because nerds paying attention to the game doesn't teach them anything if they don't care to learn it. Give me a baseball guy and a nerd guy and make them work together. Find two guys who get along enough to work together and just let both of them grow together. You know what I mean? I'm all for the analytics being in the sport, all sports. They should be in all sports. But when you start to turn it over from guys who have done this for 50 years to guys fresh out of Yale because they're good at accounting, well, I think the game's gone too far the other way.
Will Pete Alonso win his third straight home run derby?
I've got Albert Pujols beating him because I want him to.
That would be incredible if Pujols could win at this age.
I've got Albert Pujols beating him because isn't that the last? I mean, he's never going to catch anybody for home runs or RBIs at this point. I mentioned to you before the show, he moved into third all time for extra base hits. There's not a whole lot that he's going to accomplish batting 200. But he can put everything he's got into this home run derby. And I say it all the time. When you get older, it's not that you get worse. It's that your ability to put on those type of performances diminishes. So he can do it once a season at this age. He just can't do it every night. But once, I'm going to take him. I'm going to roll with it.
He's still good once as he once was? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm saying he can turn back the clock, if not for only a night.
I mean, that would be incredible if he won. Almost as good as Griffey entering in 99 and putting on the backwards hat and winning.
That was so great for that 7-year-old Frank right there. I mean, that's prime. That's prime my sports love.
Let's see. Do we have a about the sports of the day?
This day in sports, I thought we'd never get here. And in classic Frank fashion, because it's just you and I, and we're the nerds of this panel, I didn't even get to the year 2000, buddy. We're starting in 1901. Starting in 1901, we have Cy Young recording his 300th victory. He ended up with 511 and 315 losses. This guy's got as many losses as most Hall of Fame pitchers do wins because he took the ball that often. Unbelievable player. He's got 2,800 strikeouts. He's got an ERA of 2.63, still top 70 all time. He's behind a notable pitcher, Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is still to this day 17th all time in ERA. That's how good he was as a pitcher before he started hitting home runs. But that's my segue.
Oh, because my God.
In 1927, Babe Ruth sets the home run all-time record with 137. Think about that. Man went on to hit over 700 home runs. He set the record at 137. This man set the all-time record for about 560 more home runs.
Oh, my God. That's like Steph Curry hitting 15,000 threes.
It's the equivalent of if Barry had doubled up Hank. It's unfathomable. It is great. I know it's old. I know he wasn't playing against the best premier athletes in the world, probably drunk half the time. Babe Ruth was a stud. 1949, we have two things happen. Warning Pats are voted into baseball because too many players got hurt. A lot of that was Wrigley Field. A lot of that was some of that shrubbery where players used to just run headfirst into brick walls hidden behind plants. But in 1949 as well, the Los Angeles Rams signed Norm Van Brocklin. Why is that important? Why did I bring that up? Because who holds the all-time passing record in a game, Billy? It's Norm Van Brocklin, set for the Los Angeles Rams 2 years after this signing. 554 yards in a single game. No quarterback has come within 25 yards. Several quarterbacks have come within 3, but that doesn't help my narrative. 1959, the first time in a baseball game, a professional baseball game, that signs are recorded by cameras. big hats off to NBC. Not only did they save hockey after their lockout with how they presented the sport, they've always been good at revolutionizing camera work. This was great play here. 1996, I got two more. Hold on. 1996, Jordan signs for $30 million. This is when he was going 1 year by 1 year after the retirement. This is his second to last contract, or third to last contract with the Bulls. And then 1998, Zinedine Zidane, famous notably for headbutting somebody during the World Cup, won his first and only World Cup for France against Brazil, 1998.
Wasn't Jordan's contract that like 30 million? Didn't it go from like 7.8 to like 30? Like they basically, like, didn't he put like a ridiculous demand for the
Michael Jordan? And we can't get any like real evidence of a lot of this because the league doesn't want it. You know what I mean? We can read a bunch, but a lot of it will be conflicting. Basically, from the time that Jordan first re-upped with the Bulls to the time he retired, he was getting paid over $30 million a year. Whether that was incentive or signing bonus or given to him in cars or properties, whatever. The man was making $30 million a year pretty much after his rookie contract, period. And the only reason he was signing 1 year deals after his retirement was because of the Phil Jackson, Jerry Krause relationship. That man would have signed for 3 years, $110 million before it was an overpayment for Brunson or Randall. It would have been worth it. It would have been for Jordan, but it also would have been when the second highest player was getting paid $20 million a year. So,
all right. Well, how about our idiot of the week?
Idiot of the week, I got two. All right, the Mets traded a player to another team for $1, and then in that player's debut, he banged in 2 RBIs against them. So the New York Mets, hats off to you, moron. You traded a player who you thought had nothing left, and he came to town and beat you. Idiot face. And even though it's months away, I'm sorry, but the Panthers will be paying Baker Mayfield week 1. Or sorry, the Browns, because of the freaking Browns. Will be paying Baker Mayfield week 1 to beat them as he plays for Carolina. Just all-time dumb moves. 2 teams willing to pay a player to beat them. Now, I heard of a college paying Charlie Weiss $30 million to don't come back here. I've heard of that. I've never heard of a team paying millions of dollars to actively let you beat us. Never heard of this.
Well, hey, Frank, there is a big QB competition there in Carolina. You know, Sam Darnold could potentially beat him out.
I think Darnold's better. I think they're both not good, but I think Darnold's better. I don't know why they traded a fifth round pick.
I don't think it's like a big disparity either way. It's like, why would you trade for Baker if you have Sam Darnold? You know, like,
because he's Matt Rule. Matt Rule's one of these guys who thinks he's a genius. Matt Rule's one of these Chip Kelly guys. He thinks he's a lot smarter than
Baker Mayfield's going to throw to Christian McCaffrey 700 times this year, I feel like.
Look.
How many games does Christian McCaffrey make it healthy?
I don't care. Anybody throwing the ball to DJ Moore should have a good season. And it bothers me that nobody could last year. DJ Moore, for my money, is a top 5 wide receiver in this league in terms of potential. I think DJ Moore's got all the talent. I think he's explosive Marvin Harrison. I think DJ Moore has got every tool you want. 5-tool player gets tossed around a lot in sports, usually not actually applicable. Tell me something DJ Moore doesn't do well. He's fast, he's agile, he's quick, he's a great route runner, has good hands. Tell me what he doesn't do well. I think I should be able to throw the ball to DJ Moore. All you have to do is send Robbie Anderson on a fucking fly route every single route. And just open up the middle of the field. You throw it to McCaffrey underneath. You send it to Moore on crossers. You keep Anderson very, very long. It's not that hard. NFL, for all the elaborations, it's still window dressing. It's still pre-snap movement and then a regular play that we've seen for 50 years because it's still football.
Carolina, got to look forward to big things down there this year.
Morons. Complete dumb moron faces. They traded for a guy arguably worse than the guy they have, who, by the way, neither one is good enough.
God, Jacoby Brissett's going to start for every team in the league at this point, too. I mean, that guy, that guy was drafted. You never even knew if he'd play a game. He started for like half the teams now.
Well, Bill Belichick may not have coaches that have maintained longevity, but he's got a bunch of players paid in other locations where they went on to do nothing.
Well, good for him. All right, great. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We will catch you same time, same place next week. For Frank Bradica, I'm Billy Allen, and we'll catch you then.